All right, so once again, continuing to show you all of these different press conferences from our officials all across the country. Do want to say thank you again to everyone who is watching here with us. A new hour, and we are continuing our coverage of Hurricane Ian as it continues to gather strength as it now makes track for Florida. We know that it right now is a Category 3 storm. It is moving at about 10 miles per hour, and that right there is a concern for officials once it does make landfall. They're concerned about it sitting over the lands and then possibly causing a lot more damage when it comes to the rain that's going to be coming down. Power companies are shutting off electricity ahead of the hurricane. Florida military bases also prepping for Hurricane Ian. As many people also who have ships out there and boats, they're getting them prepared as well, especially as we know that this storm could possibly take lives because of its strength. And also you think about just the amount of damage that gets left behind, people trying to get back a little bit too early. Unfortunately, that can create a lot of problems and issues. We've heard some of our officials already speaking about that here today, talking about what to do once you are allowed back into some of these areas. And did want to also let our viewers know that, of course, not only we're keeping track of this throughout the rest of this evening, but into tomorrow on Wednesday, going to continue to keep our full coverage right here for you on Live Now from Fox as we are going to be tracking this storm. Do you have another update coming from our officials here shortly with our Hurricane Association as they are continuing to keep everyone else up to date. So we'll be bringing you their very latest one coming up here very shortly. It's supposed to be happening here in this hour. And if you're just new here joining with us on Live Now from Fox, thanks so much. Don't forget that you can always make sure to save the channel that you're watching this on or star it on your bookmark, your tab. That way you can always stay up to date on the latest press conferences happening all across the country. Right now, more than 2.5 million Floridians have been ordered to evacuate. This because of all of the preparations that are underway here for Hurricane Ian. Let's go ahead and take a look at just some of those videos that we have coming in here to our Live Now from Fox desk as we have some of our officials giving us some looks up in the air as they're tracking this storm, but then also a lot of people down on the ground. As we know, again, a lot of evacuations already underway. There's mandatory evacuations in place as well as some voluntary areas of volunteer evacuations as well. Some of our police officials have been updating folks saying that once you evacuate a neighborhood, it's going to be hard to get back in, especially because they're worried about who could be trying to take advantage of neighbors being gone. So they are going to be out patrolling the area. They said you are going to need some official identification if you're going to be coming back into your neighborhoods once this hurricane has passed. But right now, a lot of eyes on just how intense this is getting to be, especially as it is rapidly approaching Florida as a major hurricane. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said in a press conference this morning there's still uncertainty with where that exact landfall will be, but just understand the impacts are going to be far, far broader than just where the eye of the storm happens to make landfall. In some areas, there will be catastrophic flooding and life-threatening storm surge that we have to be concerned about as well. Let's go ahead and bring you that very latest update as we do have our officials giving us some more looks at these tracks as they are continuing to make their way into the Gulf. I know a lot of folks have already been evacuating the area if they're in the path of that storm. But let's go ahead and bring that very latest update right here to you on Live Now from Fox.
Right, well, that really today is the day to evacuate. If you've been asked to evacuate, especially from those vulnerable storm surge, you have storm surge locations that are prone to storm surge along the
All right, so it looks like he may be talking with one of our stations, giving them their latest update. If he does do an official update for their Facebook page, of course, we'll be keeping track of that right here for you on Live Now from Fox. That was going to be an update with our National Hurricane Center's acting director, as he's giving us sometimes these updates regularly throughout the day. But we do have Manatee County. They've been giving us an update on the very latest, as they are right in the direct path of the center of this hurricane. Our officials speaking now. Let's go ahead and bring that to you here on Live Now from Fox.
And thank you for being with us. This is our first afternoon briefing for Hurricane Ian today. With regards to emergency management officials, the expanded the mandatory evacuation order to include both level A and B in Manatee County. Additionally, residents living in evacuation level C are encouraged to find shelter further inland. We are evacuating tens of thousands of people from the barrier island as residents and visitors are heading to are heeding to our advice. I can tell you, yesterday afternoon I saw golf carts leaving on Manatee Avenue, leaving Holmes Beach. Level A, and it's important to note, level A includes Rabonia, Palmetto Point, Terracea, and the tens of thousands of mobile and manufactured homes in Manatee County. We will be turning off the water to the islands at sunset tonight to try and save the infrastructure from Ian's wrath. The sewage lift stations on the islands will also be turned off to prevent possible damage to the system. People need to take this seriously. Evacuate now if you are in level A, level B, or if you are in level C and are concerned, especially individuals around Wares Creek. We have more shelter locations open today at noon. We added Hale Middle School and Buffalo Creek Middle School. In addition to the others opened at 8 a.m. this morning, Braden River High School, which is pet friendly, Manatee High School, which is pet friendly, Mills Elementary School, also pet friendly, Bayshore Elementary School, Freedom Elementary School, Gullett Elementary School, Harvey Elementary School, Lee Middle School, Mayaca City Elementary School, Miller Elementary School, McNeil Elementary School, Rogers Garden Elementary School, Williams Elementary School, and Willis Elementary School. And I feel like I'm back on the school board. More than 229,000 sandbags have been distributed to date at sites all over the county. Our supplies have been exhausted, though. We are out of bags. This storm, even though it's doing what hurricanes do and it has a little jog here and a little jiggle there, it is still a major hurricane. Hurricanes do what this one is doing. A little bit of guidance to the south doesn't mean we are out of the woods. We can expect flooding, tornadoes, driving rain, and storm surge are the threats that we are anticipating. And we are anticipating it to start tonight. We will probably begin seeing tropical storm winds and rain, typical tropical storm conditions around midnight tonight. If you are in an evacuation area, evacuate and be in your safe area by sundown. That way you can get settled in, because when the tropical weather begins to come into our area, we will lock down the EOC and we will lock down the shelters to protect the individuals that have evacuated and gone into the shelters for safety. If you are evacuating to a friend's house, a colleague's home that's inland and in an area outside of the evacuation zone, try to get there before sundown. You can already see the outer bands have begun to hit our area. It is only going to get worse, and it's going to get worse quickly. Don't wait until it's too late, because we will shut down the roads when the winds are too high to safely navigate through the county. This is early afternoon. You need to finish securing your homes. You need to make sure you're packed for a couple of days. This storm has picked up a little bit of forward motion, but it is still moving slowly. We can expect hurricane and/or tropical storm conditions for at least 36 hours. It is not going to pass through our area quickly, and it's going to drop a tremendous amount of rain. It's going to have intense gusty winds. This will come on shore north of Venice at the moment, but how many of you have driven to Venice Beach? It is not that far. If you look at the size of that storm, and that image was taken about 2 hours ago, it has grown into a very large hurricane. It is expected to be a Category 3 storm when it reaches our shore. I can't underemphasize this enough. This is not something we have seen in the Tampa Bay area in 100 years. 100 years. This is a serious storm. It is not to be taken lightly. I know I've been in the Tampa Bay area for decades too, and it seems like we always luck out. Do not count on us lucking out with this storm. It is serious. If you are on the islands, you need to be off of the island by sundown. The water will be shut off. The lift stations will be shut off. And if any of you don't know what a lift station is, that is what's required when you flush your toilet for what was in your toilet to be lifted off the island. You do not want to be on the island with a Category 3 hurricane and no water and no sewage disposal. It's not going to be fun, and it's not going to be safe. This is going to be a slow-moving storm. You want to be in a safe location to ride it out. Fill your tub with water to flush, but hopefully you're not on the island trying to compensate for the lift stations being shut off. And remember, if power is out, no lift stations in your area are going to be working. As the storm makes its way closer, remember to not head out in the storm. Once we get word out that it is not safe to be outside and driving a vehicle, please don't do it. Because if we tell you it's not safe to go out and drive around town, it means if you have a problem, our emergency vehicles aren't going to be out driving around town either, which means you're going to be stuck. If you see water in the road, unless you are absolutely sure you have X-ray vision and depth sounder eyes, don't drive through it. You may get stuck. As our utility folks are reminding residents to not try and remove manholes and cleanouts to clear clogs. Let our experts do it when it's safe to do it. Don't play utility guy. After the storm, if you want a job in utilities, you can personally call me. We'll hire you, and we'll train you to lift those manholes. Current projections have landfall as a Category 3 somewhere north of Venice on Wednesday evening. That's about 6 to 12 hours sooner than was projected this morning. So we can expect landfall Wednesday evening, but remember, this evening is when we are going to start receiving tropical storm weather that is going to continue to escalate until we get the outer wall of the Cat 3 force winds, 120 to 125 miles an hour with gusts pushing 150. That's like flying a small airplane. You don't want to put your hand out in it. That is a lot of wind, it's a lot of impact, and it's going to be pushing a tremendous amount of water. Stay in a safe location. The track remains uncertain. The track remains uncertain. Just because we had a small update that says, well, it looks like that eye is going to go into North Venice and not Coquina Beach. Remember, it is uncertain. A tiny little wobble in the other direction will throw the model back at us. But if you look at the size of that storm, and over the next 36 hours, it's going to get larger. Regardless of where it comes in Sarasota or Manatee County, you are going to feel like you're getting hit by a major hurricane. And guess what? Because you are getting hit by a major catastrophic hurricane. With that, I want to introduce our Congressman, Vern Buchanan, who I'm sure has been making the rounds up and down his district. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our viewers watching here with us on Live Now from Fox. Our Manatee County officials trying to give as much warning to the residents that they can. If they are still in the area, they're needing to evacuate now and get their preparations finalized. We are going to be sending some viewers off to a 2-minute break. We're right back here listening in with our officials when you return.
Preparing us for this storm and response. I did meet with Florida Power and Light, all their top leaders in the company, and I can tell you they're very focused here in terms of what they're staging in this region. It's gigantic. Sometimes it's a sea of trucks and capability, so help's on the way that way. This is a massive, slow-moving storm. The storm will produce a long period of wind and rain. There could be life-threatening storm surges. As was mentioned a little bit earlier, we've got to take this serious, and I've watched a lot of these storms over the years, and many times we get blessed or lucky, it'll head up north or head down south. I don't think this is the case this time based on all the experts I'm talking about. The track can change, which could have a severe impact. I do want to remind people, and those that were around during Charlie, I just was watching, it was supposed to go up in Tampa. It ended up doing a beeline into Charlotte Harbor, 90 degrees, and then it went from a Category 2 to a Category 4, like instantly. And I still remember that because we had a lot of employees and families and businesses who were concerned about it. Now is the time to execute your plan. If you don't have a plan, you make sure you do get it. And if you are in an evacuation zone, leave it if you haven't already left. We're monitoring the weather reports. We get a lot of updates. But I want to mention, listen to your local management of facilities. FEMA is deployed and ready. I just got off the line to the top appropriator for Florida, Mario. He's a very good friend of mine. He's called me, and we've made sure that we're going to have whatever resources we need quickly into this region, not just with FEMA, but additional resources from the federal government. Power companies are on standby, but it could be a few days before they get to you. We need to be ready. We need to be safe. But as was mentioned earlier, this is a serious storm. People need to take it seriously. And I'm very concerned kind of for the region, but I'm very hopeful. But I don't think, if you take a look at the storm in general, he did mention it might come down to Venice, but it's still in the region. It's a big storm, and we've got to do everything to keep everybody safe. But I will assure you, from my standpoint, a federal response in terms of FEMA and appropriators, we will be ready and supportive and do everything we can to get people back safely and quickly once the storm leaves, ideally on Friday or Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take questions, I'd like to go ahead and let the Deputy Director and Emergency Management Chief Steve Lischauer share with you all of the activities that have been going on since we started at the level 2 and moved into level 1 this morning at 8 o'clock. Chief?
Thank you, Dr. Hopes. Thank you, Congressman. Again, a lot of this will be reinforcing what Dr. Hope said earlier. We increased our evacuation level this morning. That includes mandatory A and B, voluntary C. If you are in levels A and B, which includes mobile homes, manufactured homes, RVs, nursing facilities, and acute care facilities, you need to go now. Please do not refuse to leave. Please take our instructions and directions seriously. This is a serious storm. Surge levels have increased per our 1 o'clock national weather call. Very big surge starting Wednesday, which is less than 24 hours from now. We could see 5-foot to 10-foot surge, and in some areas near that eye of that wall, and both the Congressman and Dr. Hopes talked, Venice Beach is not that far away from us. It wobbled, it can re-wobble. Near the wall, surge could be up to 10 to 15 feet. Please do not drive through high water. As we entered into what we call level 1 activation, you could see through the windows, we have an EOC full of our partners that ranges from law enforcement to fire to the power companies to utility companies. The Red Cross is here, the health department is here, state assets have already come into our EOC, out-of-county assets have come here. They're working diligently to prepare for when the storm passes that we can react as quickly as we can. But please heed our warnings in our evacuations area. Please adhere to the evacuation orders. See mymanatee.org/weather to see your evacuation level or to see a map. If you're going to a shelter, you must take a cot or sleeping bag, personal items, and especially your prescriptions. So please adhere to our instructions. Please be safe and listen to our instructions. Thank you. Folks.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Congressman. And I can't emphasize this enough. Our federal partners, through the funding that Congressman Buchanan and his colleagues have provided, have given us exceptional analytic tools to be able to go in and look at individual homes on streets and look at what the prediction is for storm surge. And when we say 5 to 10 feet, that's 5 to 10 feet above ground level. That's not 5 to 10 feet above sea level. It's above ground level. The federal government has done an exceptional job, and I can tell you because it's a pain in the rear for us to send them all the information. When you have new elevation certificates, they get that data, and it goes into the software. And we can literally put a flag on different corners of your home and tell what the storm surge prediction is for your home, whether you're on Wares Creek or Sneed Island, or Anna Maria, or Holmes Beach. And that's how we base these decisions with regards to both the evacuations and the emphasis that we were placing on it. Now, you've spent a lot of time with me over the past year and a half, and I got to thank Congressman Buchanan, because at every single emergency I have overseen, he has been with us multiple times, and he has been making phone calls to ensure that we have the federal support we need. And that doesn't happen in all areas of the country, but it happens right here because of the good work of Congressman Buchanan. Let me tell you what makes me lose sleep in this situation. It's people not heeding the warning and not evacuating. My goal for this stage of the emergency is no fatalities, no deaths among residents and visitors in Manatee County due to this emergency. Now, the sheriff spoke yesterday. They're not going to go handcuff you and yank you out of your home because you didn't evacuate. It's not fair to the good staff, the federal partners, the state partners that are here will be sleeping here. They're going to be locked in tonight. They will not be able to leave. They're here without their families to ensure all of you safely get through this storm. Again, my goal and the goal of every person here over the next 48 hours is no fatalities. None. I don't want to see it in the newspaper. I don't want to bear the burden that I didn't do enough. And the hundreds of people that are working every day. When we tell you it's a mandatory evacuation, we are not doing it because we want to push you around. We are doing it because the information that we have indicates that there is a risk for loss of life. So please, I don't want the police chief on Holmes Beach calling me to say, please don't turn off the water because you know our residents aren't going to leave. If you're on the island, leave. Do us that one favor. Take our advice, protect your life, so we don't have to spend the rest of our life wondering what else we could have done to convince you to evacuate to a safe place. A safe place that has water, a safe place that probably has electricity, maybe even TV. And if you go to a friend's house, you're going to have good company. Please, heed the warnings. You only have a few more hours. Pretty much, I'm sure, come midnight or 2 a.m. tomorrow morning, you won't be out on the road because it will not be safe. If you're in a level A or a level B, evacuate. If you need help, you call 311, you call a friend, we'll see what we can do. Follow the guidance that we're giving you. That's what you pay us to do. With that, I'll take questions.
Hey, Doc, let me add one thing. We've never seen surges 5 to 10 feet. Houston, go look at what happened in Houston just a little bit ago. It became a stationary front. We don't know whether this front's going to move through, how quick. If you get to 10-foot surges, there's going to be a lot of people hurt. Look at Katrina. Look at what happened just in the Bahamas, where there was communities of people that disappeared. So I don't want to be an alarmist. That's not I like to look at the bright side of things. But in this scenario, we have to look at the downside as well as the upside. And you've got to take this very seriously, as the doctor was saying, because
Take it seriously is definitely something we've heard reiterated by multiple officials all across Florida and even across the U.S. as well, as they continue to track the path of this hurricane. Live now from Fox, we'll step away for a 2-minute break. When we come back, we'll continue to give everyone warnings about this hurricane, how you should be preparing yourself, and especially the importance of staying safe once we do have that storm surge as well. We'll be talking with a former FEMA official coming up here after this 2-minute break. Amazing video evidence of just how large this storm is, especially as it continues to track its way into the Gulf of Mexico. Residents trying to get themselves prepared ahead of time. NASA showing us some of the views from up above. Quite a different look than sometimes what we see on our radars. But we do want to let all of our viewers know when it comes to coverage, we are keeping you in full alert and keeping you up to date on everything you need to know about. Thanks so much again for being here with us on Live Now from Fox. We do want to continue talking about Hurricane Ian as it's moving its way towards Florida. We know that more than 2.5 million people evacuating from that state, and especially as that track of the storm continues to change, residents also need to keep themselves prepared and up to date as much as possible. Here to help do that with us is our former FEMA employee. We do have Mark Naveau joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Mark, we appreciate your time here today. I know you and I were speaking a little bit about just why this storm in particular is so dangerous. Florida not seeing a hurricane like this on the Gulf side in many, many years. And it's also what comes with that storm, more than just the winds, that you say is concerning.
Yeah, no question. Hi, Christy. The challenge to this one is the speed in which it's moving. Of course, we haven't hit landfall yet. We're talking 24, 36 hours out. But what the track is anticipated to hit, as you said, on the west side that hasn't seen a hurricane in 100 years, but that this hurricane may stall, move slowly over land. And you couple the amount of rain that's predicted along with a 10-foot storm surge, which is really just a big wall of water coming from the Gulf of Mexico. Those two combining can make this a very deadly and dangerous hurricane.
Well, and you were speaking about that to me, that the storm surge is really where you can see, unfortunately, a lot of lives lost. So go into a bit more detail about what it does, especially when we know that this storm is moving pretty slowly over the area of Florida once it will make landfall.
Yeah, what we're really talking about, most people would perceive it to be almost like a tidal wave. And so depending upon the force that this hurricane comes in off of the Gulf, which they're anticipating on that west side, anywhere from 6 to 10-foot wave just moving its way through an inland. And that can go up to a half a mile inland. So you may be on the coast thinking you're safe, but here comes this tremendous wave of water that's going to come, coupled with the rainfall. It overwhelms the ground supply, the storm drains. It can't drain. It's knocking down power lines. It's knocking power out. So it becomes a very big challenge for folks.
And as we think ahead to these next few hours and into these next few days, I know so many people have been listening to their county officials. How important is it that people are really taking the warning seriously instead of thinking this is just something to dramatize what's going on?
Yeah, it is huge because you can't recover from some of this. You know, once that the water starts to come in from the Gulf of Mexico plus the rainfall, there's no egress, right? Because not only are we talking about water, we're talking about winds up to 110 miles an hour, which are going to knock down power lines. It's going to block egress for folks. It's not going to allow first responders to come in and get folks if they decide to stay. That's why they're trying to emphasize, if you're anywhere near, just leave. And you don't have to go too far is what they're saying. You don't necessarily have to go to another state, but you do have to go far enough away. And so they're encouraging people, don't wait. Just get out now, be safe. You can always come back if nothing happens. A little bit of inconvenience. On the other side, you could lose your life if you don't evacuate.
Yeah, I think that right there is the biggest emphasis that all of our officials we've been listening into have been saying, is that do you really want to risk your life to stay in your home during this event? And as you said, it's as easy as moving inland a little bit further for those who are right along that Gulf Coast.
Absolutely. And Florida, you know, they're no stranger to hurricanes. They're very good at responding to these. As a matter of fact, they have a contraflow system where they can change the direction of the freeways to egress. And it's one of the few states in the entire nation that requires gas stations to have emergency generators on those evacuation freeways so that people can get fuel if necessary. So they're really good about being able to move people, heed the advice, get out, board up. You can always come back. Be safe.
And Mark, thinking about then once people are returning and then they're going to have to assess the damage, that's why it's so important that they are doing all these preparations ahead of time, because then when they come back, they already had all their video evidence, their photos of their homes, so that they can see the difference that may have been left behind because of this hurricane. And then I know a lot of people too are going to have a long road to recovery depending on how much damage they may have seen.
Yeah, without question. And you know, with phones nowadays, you can quickly go through your house and just do a video, and you're in essence chronicled all your possessions and the status of those. That's very easy to do, very simple. Take it with you, and you've got a good chronological log of what's there in case you have to, you know, hopefully not many people do, but you have to recover from this. You have to remember too, it's not just people's homes, but it's the business, it's the infrastructure. And Tampa Bay, for example, half of the fuel, gasoline that's used each day comes in through the Tampa Bay port. So if that port, we know it's going to be shut down as a precaution, but if there's damage to that port, now we're talking about a shortage of gasoline, potentially. They've got reserves, but that just gives you an idea of not just the risk to people, but also to the business and the economy.
So what's the biggest difference then with what a hurricane we're seeing coming today versus other ones that they've been dealing with? Because as we've mentioned, of course, the Gulf side usually pretty protected when it comes to hurricane season. So what are you noticing here with this one?
Yeah, I think the alarm, you know, the National Hurricane Center does a wonderful job at being able to track these storms and come up with different paths and probabilities. But we also know it's Mother Nature, and we spend a lot of time chasing hurricanes around. So you put resources in different locations. They've got urban search and rescue swift water teams, you know, down in Miami, in Tennessee, and Georgia. They've got 13,000 additional electrical workers ready to respond in if necessary. They've got meals ready to eat. They've got bottled water and distribution sites. So they're doing everything necessary to prepare. But the concern with this one is it's high winds, heavy rainfall, coupled with this storm surge. Rarely do you have all three of those aligned with such magnitude that they're anticipating here. And that's where the alarm's coming from.
Yeah, and we know from those officials as they're trying to get all the residents prepared, they said, you know, we don't want to put ourselves in harm's way to have to go and rescue you. So please heed all the warnings. Any final thoughts, Mark, that you want to leave with our viewers as we continue to look ahead to Hurricane Ian making its approach to Florida?
Well, one of the challenges to this is if they lose power, right? It's the ability to continue to get information, which is important. So I try and encourage family and friends is to get a portable radio, have that secondary communication set up. You might not be able to use your cell phone because the towers may be down, the power's out, something like that. But if you do have a portable radio, at least you can hear what's going on and plan accordingly. Now, if you evacuate that area, that's the best thing to do because you don't have to worry about some of those. You can always come back. But the key thing, I think, is number one, evacuate and make sure you're able to gather information to make good decisions as we go through this.
Yes, and as we've been highlighting, Mark, you know, the most important thing is your life. So the rest of it, you can replace the items inside of your home. You can replace a cell phone if you happen to lose it or leave it behind, but you can't replace a life. So we do appreciate you going through all of these just important reminders for everyone. Again, Mark Naveau joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Christy.
And don't forget, Live Now going to continue coverage right here for you of our hurricane. Going to be speaking with the former Tampa mayor coming up here in just a bit. We'll take a short break and then come back with more content coming your way on Hurricane Ian. It's all coming up here in just a few minutes. A look here again at the track as we continue to watch Hurricane Ian make its way, especially when it comes to the Gulf side of Florida. But all residents across the entire state are getting themselves prepared. And we know that there's so many people in the path of this storm already here today. We've been hearing updates from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He did say 2.5 million Floridians have been ordered to evacuate as Hurricane Ian continues to barrel closer. Thanks so much for being here with us on Live Now from Fox. Christy Larson here at the desk with you as we continue to give you more updates as we track Hurricane Ian. So many people are in the path of that storm, and it is going to be a little bit of a dangerous one at that, with just how fast it is not only approaching the slowdown once it hits landfall. A lot of rain and wind going to be mixed in. And Florida, they're no strangers to hurricanes, but of course that storm surge and other items are things to be concerned about. We do want to continue bringing in some more guests here to our Live Now from Fox desk. So we do have our former Tampa mayor. He's Bob Buckhorn. He's joining us here on Live Now. And Bob, we appreciate you being here today. I know that, as I mentioned, Florida, you guys have been certainly familiar with hurricanes, especially season after season. What's kind of different this time around for you?
You know, Christy, it's part of being a Floridian. You know, it's part of our DNA. Our preparation is part of our DNA. Tampa Bay area hasn't been hit in over 100 years, and so we've been very, very lucky. But we also knew that at one point our day would come, and so we prepare all year round for this to occur. I'm breathing somewhat of a sigh of relief as I see that track move a little bit further south. But bear in mind that even if it avoids Tampa, it's going to hit somebody and there will be pain inflicted. But I lived through this 5 years ago with Irma. We came very, very close to a catastrophic event in Tampa. I know Mayor Jane Castor has prepared well. The city has evacuated to the best of their ability. So I feel good about where we are, but you never lose that churning in your gut and that anxiety until that morning when the day clears and the sun comes up.
So talk about, as you mentioned, this is something year round that city officials are always planning and preparing for. But talk about what you're doing as officials in these days leading up to landfall, because I know it's probably some very intense times, high anxiety as you're trying to get all the information out to your residents that you can possibly get out.
Christy, it's all of the above. I mean, I used to have a saying that you play on Sunday, on game day, the way you practice during the week. And so we would practice hard all year round for these types of things, whether it was tabletop exercises, whether it was where we deploy, how we equip with excess generators at our pump facilities. There is nothing that the city of Tampa hasn't thought about going into this, although we will find at the end of this that there are things that the city didn't think about. That's okay. So you prepare, you test your assets, you test your resiliency, you test your communications ability, and that you hope on the day that people need you to show up. And what I love, Christy, is many people don't have any use for government, except on that one day that they really need us. And on that one day, we better be at our best. And that's what these events are the equivalent of. Our folks need us. They need us to perform. They need us to excel. They need us to be prepared. They need us to be thoughtful. They need us to give them information so that they can make their own decisions. But at the end of the day, this is when government needs to rise to the occasion. This is when mayors rise to the occasion. And certainly from what I've seen of the mayors in the Bay Area, they are doing exactly that.
Yeah, we've been hearing certainly a lot of updates also from those officials, whether they're in the Tampa area or all across Florida, really. And I think that's a key part, too, is that people are trying to find the correct information. That's one of the people they may look to is their elected mayor or their city officials. And so this really is an important few days and hours, and especially even after the storm, too, making sure people get back to those neighborhoods that they had to evacuate. They're getting back safely. So as residents are preparing to leave, I know a lot of people already had a mandatory evacuation. There are some people who are volunteering to leave as well. What are some things that they should think about as they get their homes prepared and get themselves prepared for this hurricane?
Well, ideally, they would have had a plan already and they would be executing on the plan right now. I know that is wishful thinking. A lot of longtime Floridians think that they can withstand any hurricane because they have withstood others. But every hurricane is different. And so you have a plan, you execute on that plan, you know where you're going, you know who's going with you, you made your preparations, you've identified all of the places that you need to take with you, you've secured your house, and if you're in an evacuation zone like I am, you evacuate. The key is to pay attention to the local government officials. I mean, this is not about politics. This is not a Democrat or Republican thing. If you don't listen, although you may be inconvenienced, Christy, and this storm may blow by, I would rather you be inconvenienced than have to come for you in a body bag. So think about that and think about your family as you make these decisions. Hopefully folks in flood zone A have already evacuated, as I have. My wife is a doctor at Tampa General Hospital. She is on the team that is there for emergency, so she will be living there for the next 5 days. But I took the rest of our family and listened to what the mayor said, and we evacuated. And so the longer you wait, the harder it's going to get, because the congestion on the interstate and all of the exit routes are increasingly busy. And so hopefully you were smart enough to do it before you got to that point.
Yeah, and that's something I'm sure you guys year after year are reminding people, have some of those emergency kits, have some of those items ready to go, so that if it does start to come upon you quicker, you are ready to leave your house. I know there's quite a few people that I know down in Florida who've also already heeded those warnings. They've started to evacuate their homes, just as you said you have. And then let's just kind of talk about after it makes landfall, what's going to be some of the important things residents do. It's probably still listening to their weather updates and listening to officials when it'd be safe to get back.
Well, and that's exactly right. And particularly as you think about coming back into the city, if there has been widespread damage, if there are a lot of power lines down, if there are a lot of trees falling, don't rush back. Wait till we get the clear to go, because otherwise you are just impeding the public safety officials, the police, the fire personnel who are trying to get in there or trying to check houses, trying to look for people who stayed, God forbid, look for casualties. So let them do their jobs. Let the power companies come in and do their job and try and restore power. I will tell you, Christy, as I was leaving Tampa, heading up the interstate, there must have been 500 power company trucks from all over the country that were coming like the cavalry into the Tampa Bay area to help Tampa Electric, Duke Power, restore power when the storm passes through. So the cavalry is coming, but try and stay out of the area until you get the clear to go sign, because otherwise you are part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Well, and as you've said, too, and you pointed it out, you know, these officials, some of these people are essential. They are staying behind for those emergencies that may happen. But of course, if you're able to leave, that's probably the best and wisest choice to make. Any final thoughts about these next few days and this next whole week as the storm gets ready to set upon the Gulf Coast there?
You know, Christy, I never thought that I'd be in a position to quote Mike Tyson as a mayor, but Tyson famously said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, the Tampa Bay area and areas south are about to get punched in the face. So all of the best laid plans, please understand that elected officials and folks need to adapt. They need to make decisions on the fly. It's not going to be perfect. What you did in anticipation of this changes by the minute. And so be patient. Look out for your neighbors, listen to your elected officials, and we're going to get through this with a little prayer and a little preparation and a lot of hard work.
Yeah, and hard work by so many people, not just the officials, but as you mentioned, too, all of those others who have come to the state to lend an extra hand during these next few days and even after to help with the recovery as well. We do appreciate you giving us a little bit more insight, especially on the preparedness from the city's side and our officials' side of things. Bob Buckhorn joining us here on Live Now from Fox. We do appreciate you so much for being here with us, and we hope you and your family and your wife and everyone stay safe.
Thank you, Christy.
And Live Now from Fox, we'll continue our coverage right here for you, especially as that storm continues to track towards Florida. We'll step away for a brief break, continuing to give you more officials, press conferences and updates. Going to take you out to Lee County in Florida coming up after this break. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. We do appreciate all of our viewers who have been watching here with us. I know some of our viewers not directly in the path of Hurricane Ian, but there are so many people who are going to be affected by this, especially as it continues to track towards that Tampa area. We know already from our Florida governor, who has been speaking at multiple press events here today, that there is millions of Floridians who have had to evacuate here because of this storm. So last minute preparation still underway for some people. I know my family is in that Manatee County area, so just outside of Sarasota, right in the Gulf on an island. So they, of course, were in those emergency evacuations. They were ordered that they had to leave today. They had piled up all of their furniture inside of the home. They made sure to put sandbags outside of the home at some of those creases where doorways are and such as they prepared to leave. And so many people doing that. It's sometimes some sad photos that are coming in, seeing people trying to get themselves prepared and ready and hoping that they don't see too much damage. But we do know that this is a Category 3. And it is only going to continue to make its path towards the Gulf as it could pick up to a Category 4. Our XRAD showing you just about where it is here at this time as we continue to see many people doing final preparations. County officials also giving us those final updates ahead of landfall. So let's go ahead and continue to listen in. We're going to take you out to Lee County, where our officials are once again giving some last-minute warnings to all of those who are in this path of Hurricane Ian. Let's go ahead and listen in right here on Live Now from Fox.
My name is Brian Hammond, and I'm a Lee County Commissioner. I'm joined this morning by Commissioner Kevin Ruane and Commissioner Mike Greenwell, also by our Sheriff, Carmine Marcino, and Dr. Chris Bernier from Lee County School District, our Superintendent, as well as Angela Smith, our Health Officer. This morning, we have been watching the storm overnight. Our team is mobilized in the Emergency Operations Center, as you can see behind you. But given the current forecast track this morning and the storm surge predictions, as well as the flood modeling, we're here this morning to announce evacuation orders for some parts of the county, as well as shelter openings for some parts of the county. To explain the operations and how that's going to happen, I'd like to introduce our County Manager, Roger DeJarlais.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. The evacuation this morning is a mandatory evacuation order, and that is as mandatory as can be. We will not be going house to house and forcing people to leave, but we are stressing the importance of people getting out of harm's way based on the surge models. So evacuation will be Zone A. You can look on our website and see exactly where that is, but it is generally all of the low-lying areas that are accustomed to being flooded during the spring tides. And so it's along the coastal area, the barrier islands, and upriver for a ways. But you'll be able to see that on our website. And then part of Zone B as well will be evacuated. Parts of that zone are in those low-lying areas as well, and that's south of Veterans Parkway and Cape Coral is in that Zone B area. Also, the evacuation order instructs people in mobile and manufactured homes to shelter elsewhere. When winds above 45, 50, 60 miles an hour, mobile homes are generally not a safe place to be. For those in the evacuation zones, please do not put out your garbage today because it's not going to get picked up and it's just going to get blown all over. There will be 10 emergency shelters opening at about 9 o'clock this morning. We're staffing up as we speak, and you can find a list of all those shelters on Lee County's website, that is leegov.com. United Way partners are prepared to open the emergency information hotline when the shelters open at 9 o'clock. And you all will recall that that's the 211 line. Anyone who needs help in understanding their evacuation zone or what they need to do to finish preparations, 211 is the right number to call. Please do not call 911 unless you have a true emergency. Let me see, a list of those on our website is all, let me see, excuse me. This is 0 dark 30 this morning. I'm usually not coherent this time of day. Oh, all of our shelters are pet friendly. You may recall there was a time when we had just a couple of designated shelters, but people were really not prepared to leave their dogs and cats at home. They're like a member of the family. And we also encourage these shelters are a refuge of last resort. They are not comfortable, so we'd encourage people as their first choice to see if they have relatives or friends outside of the area that's going to be affected by the storm. And you need to know that the EOC now has gone from partial activation to full activation. And we will continue to monitor the storms throughout the day and provide you the information on any of the changing operations as they occur. I'd like to introduce Sheriff Marcino, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for being here today. I just want to get a point across that we are going to feel this storm. How badly is still undetermined. My top priority, as always, is keeping everybody safe during this event. We look at it in three ways. It's before the storm, during the storm, and after the storm. And before the storm, we try to get that message out to get your non-perishables, secure your homes, and make sure that you're ready for several days without electric if need be. During the storm is most important. We want you to be at your location. We want you to be safe, and also understand, and we stress the fact that once the winds hit a sustained 45 miles per hour, law enforcement, emergency personnel are not going to respond. So God forbid someone does need 911 and they dial, a law enforcement officer is not going to respond until it's safe to. I will ensure absolutely the second it's safe, we will begin answering calls immediately without hesitation in priority. Also, don't leave your homes unless you have to. Sometimes things look like they're safe. Downed power lines, the bridges are, another one. I mean, we are going to let those bridges naturally flow, and we're going to continuously monitor them by patrol and also by the latest and greatest technology at the Real-Time Intelligence Center. But we want you to stay off the roadways. Let's get this storm or whatever it brings us past us to ensure that you get out there and you're safe when you do. The county's done a great job with our shelters. We will be manning the shelters to make sure people are safe. And again, we will get through this. The great residents of this county and the state of Florida, we're no stranger to these storms, but we ask that you work with us and help us make certain that you're safe. And thanks for being here today.
We'll take questions if you have them. Yes, ma'am.
How much space do we have at these shelters, and what should they not bring?
Sandra?
Yeah, we feel confident that we're able to adequately support the number of people in the evacuated areas that we feel will be seeking the shelters. And in people who are going to be coming to the shelters, we do ask that you bring any essential supplies, medications. If you're bringing pets, please bring food, a cage for your animals, leashes. We don't have cots at shelters, so please bring something to sleep on, a pillow, and some entertainment, books, because if you do, power goes out, then you can't charge your devices. So just bring anything that you feel that would make you comfortable. Keep in mind that there could be crowding at the shelters, so try not to bring too much stuff. When you enter, you'll get a small area in the shelter to reside in during that time.
Before Irma, I believe you issued an order 2 to 3 days before impact. We expect impact tomorrow. Did you kind of consider issuing this order before? What stopped you, and what kind of changed overnight?
We did consider calling for evacuation yesterday, but given the uncertainty of the path, the timing just wasn't right. And so the current path with the anticipated impacts of the storm meets all the criteria that we use for calling for evacuation. And the areas being evacuated are small compared to the evacuations during Irma. You may recall that Irma covered the entire state with hurricane force winds. This storm is much smaller. We don't expect nearly the same kinds of wind velocities that we saw during Irma. So calling for evacuation today is a perfectly reasonable decision. Stacy?
Roger, a lot of new people to Lake County and to Florida. What message do you have for those folks that are new to our
People who have moved to Lee County in the last several years after Hurricane Irma, which of course was the last storm, is they should stay tuned to the local television stations and news outlets for all of their information, and we will continue to provide storm information to the TV stations and others, so that people will then they'll know exactly how to react, whether it's evacuation or picking up all of the furniture in their yard and debris, so that it doesn't blow and damage neighbors' homes. So it's a lot of common sense. But if you're in the evacuation zone, go ahead and leave. Take your time, but go ahead and leave now. But otherwise, pay attention to the TV stations. Yes, sir.
Kevin, what advice do you have for people in Fort Myers Beach or Sanibel that decide not to go?
Well, if people on the barrier islands who decide not to go, they do so at their own peril. The best thing they can do is leave. With the kind of tidal surge we're talking about, it would not be uncommon for both islands to be overwashed, and it's a dangerous place to be. We cannot, by law, force people off the islands, but we strongly recommend that they go. Yes, sir.
As far as trash and yard waste goes, are you advising residents to still put that out today? Are we still picking those items up to make sure that they're not flying around in the case of strong winds?
If you're in the evacuation zone A and partial B partial evacuation zone and B, that you not put your trash out. Everyone else, go ahead, put their trash out. We'll be picking up today based on the regular schedule, and then we'll see how the storm progresses, and we can announce later today or tomorrow about future trash pickup days. Yes, ma'am.
We still have residents asking about sandbags. Do you know the status of that? Will there be any available today?
Sandra.
We did have the sand locations out yesterday. Many of them were depleted, so there may still be some sand drops locations that are available. You can contact your fire districts if you're still looking for some sand.
How many people do you expect to leave, and how many people kind of live in these zones?
So there are about 250,000 people who live in the evacuation zones that we've outlined, and we would anticipate about 10%. Based on history, 10% to leave.
Is there a place you advise people to kind of go? A certain area that you think would be, a better place to evacuate?
Simple enough to pay attention to the forecast track of the storm as it progresses. And first, if people are going to leave, find a relative or friend outside the evacuation area, outside the effects of the storm as first choice. Second choice, go to one of the shelters, one of the 10 shelters, and as a last resort, stay at home. Depending on where you live, sheltering at home is not a bad option, but people will have to make their own decision.
Lastly, can you just briefly go over Zone A and Zone B, which areas, name the locations?
Sandra.
Yeah, and we'll be posting a map. It'll be important to direct residents to the map because then they can see where they live pinpointed to that map. But essentially, Zone A is all the barrier islands and all the coastal areas and leading up to the borders next to the river, the Caloosahatchee River. And there'll be some areas down in the Bonita area closer to the Imperial River. So again, important for everyone to look at that map. And then, as was stated earlier, Zone B, the only Zone B that is called for is south of Veterans in Cape Coral.
We good?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, did media want to stick around?
Thank you again to everyone who's been watching here with us. Our track here showing us exactly where we will see landfall being made at a Category 3. It's going to be hitting, it looks like the center of the storm just a little bit south of Tampa now. We have been talking with a number of our officials as well as bringing you press conferences from all across the state as well. We do have St. Petersburg officials speaking next after this 2-minute break. Our St. Petersburg mayor, as well as other officials from the administration, speaking about preparations for Hurricane Ian. Let's go ahead and bring that to you right here on Live Now from Fox.
And we want to make sure the community has the most up-to-date information available as we brace for this major hurricane. Now, around noon, I had the opportunity to speak with President Biden and FEMA Director Criswell, and they assured me that the administration and FEMA are monitoring the storm around the clock and are ready to support relief efforts in any way we deem necessary. I relayed to them our gratitude and reminded them of the strength and resilience of St. Petersburg's community and assured them that we have some of the finest employees and first responders in the nation, and they are ready to work alongside federal, regional, state, and other partners after the storm. Now, even though the center of the storm, of the projected track of the hurricane, has shifted further south, this is not the time to let down our guard. A powerful hurricane will approach the west coast of Florida later tomorrow and Thursday. St. Petersburg remains in the cone of uncertainty, and that means that the center of the hurricane is projected to travel somewhere in that cone. Do not focus on the center track. While we are hopeful that the current southward trend will lessen our impacts, this still is a huge storm that will still bring damaging weather to our city, even if it makes landfall further to the south. We have the potential for extended rain and major flooding, winds greater than 100 miles per hour, and damaging tornadoes, in addition to storm surge. Storms are also known to wobble in the final approach to landfall. They are unpredictable, and at any given time, we could see Hurricane Ian track back to the north and pose an imminent threat. Now, mandatory evacuations have been ordered for zones A, B, and C and mobile homes. Please continue to heed evacuation orders and get to your safe place by tonight before conditions are expected to deteriorate. As Governor DeSantis stated in our press conference yesterday, you don't need to go to Georgia. You just need to get to higher ground in a non-evac zone with your storm kit and supplies. Finally, thanks to the St. Petersburg City employees who have been working around the clock to ensure that we are prepared for this storm. And after Ian passes, we will make sure any interrupted services are restored, and we will move down a path of rebuilding with resiliency in mind. Thank you to the St. Pete community for doing your part and taking the time to plan and prepare for the storm. Remember, you can visit stpeteprepares.com for real-time updates and information. And now I'd like to pass it on to our emergency manager, Amber Bolton. Amber?
Thank you, Mayor. So some of you may be breathing a sigh of relief as we've seen the latest track of Hurricane Ian shift a little bit south. Trust me, I'm with you. You know, as someone who also lives in a low-lying area, prepping my home and my family to evacuate, I want to let you know that now's not the time to let your guard down. So while we may be breathing a little easier, we still have to, lean forward and prepare because, as Mayor Welch said, we see those wobbles, right? So even though it's tracked south, we're still in that cone of uncertainty. And the National Weather Service has said that landfall can be anywhere from Fort Myers up to Cedar Key, most likely somewhere between Tampa Bay and Fort Myers. Even if the hurricane does stay south of us on its current forecast, we're not out of the woods. Mayor Welch mentioned the wind, the rain, the surge, and I just want to give you some specific numbers that's currently being forecast by the National Weather Service. Storm surge of 5 to 8 feet in the bay Wednesday night. If you live in those low-lying areas in St. Pete, you know what 5 to 8 feet can do. That's going to push a lot of water up into our roads, into our homes. Potential rainfall, in addition to that surge up to 24 inches, can be, catastrophic in some areas. So that rainfall, that's a big impact that I don't want anyone to overlook. In addition, tornado event. With the way that it's forecast with the cold front coming down and this hurricane coming up and meeting that cold front, we have we could have a significant tornado event. So I don't want you to overlook what this storm could do. It is a very serious situation still, and it's not a quick moving storm. It's expected to slow down as it approaches our coast, so it's not going to be an in-and-out storm, it's going to sit here for a while. So it's going to prolong that event and really exacerbate those impacts. So again, we urge you to please use the remainder of today to prepare your family, prepare your pets for the long haul. Thank you, and stay safe, and I will turn it over to Claude Tinkersley, our Public Works Administrator.
Thank you, Amber. We've been preparing for these storms in many different ways, including spending hundreds of millions of dollars to improve our systems and putting in hundreds of thousands of labor hours to make sure that we're ready. And we're really grateful for all the people that have been assisting us. We're grateful to the citizens for working with us during the preparation for this storm. And we're aware of those people that have evacuated, but also aware that many of us still remain. And for those of us to remain, I want to ask you, I want to plead with you actually, during the storm, please reduce the amount of water you're using. We're not asking you to stop using water. We're not asking you to inconvenience yourself. But we want to make sure that when the storm is over, that this system is ready to welcome back those who have evacuated and to help us recover and get back to work. So if you would do us a favor, reduce that water usage during the storm, and we will make it through and be able to welcome everybody back. Thank you very much. And now I'll turn it back over to Mayor Welch.
Thank you, Claude and Amber. That concludes our comments, and we'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Mayor, have you made any asks of the federal government or of for any asks for resources?
Well, both Governor DeSantis and the White House reached out, as well as Rick Scott and Charlie Crist. I mean, our federal and state representatives have reached out to us and told us when we need something to let them know they are pre-positioning supplies both at the state and the federal level. And so I think we'll be in good shape. I'll ask Amber or any other staff member if you've got more information.
Exactly what Mayor Welch said. In addition, we have great relationship with our county partners at County Emergency Management. And the way our resource structure flows is when we have a need here in St. Petersburg, we make that request up through Pinellas County to see if they can fulfill that resource need. And then that request will go on up to the state and to the federal level. So we'll be pre-scripting, some issues and gaps that we know that we have now. And as those gaps and issues present themselves during the storm or after the storm as we recover, we'll make those requests up through the county.
Could you elaborate on the gaps?
I mean, it depends what our impacts are. So if it's a high water situation, and let's say we need additional boats for search and rescue or additional personnel to come down and aid our personnel when it comes to recovery, those would be those requests that we would send.
So things like trees, like that hasn't necessarily been requested.
Well, if our Leisure Services Administrator would like to come up, we do have contracts in place for those post-storm debris cleanups.
Mike, do you want to address that, Mike Jeffries?
Just as Amber indicated, we have contracts in place for debris management. We also have contracts in place for monitoring services so that we can get the fullest reimbursement while being efficient and effective and returning the streets of St. Pete back to the beautiful streets that they are pre-storm.
Are there any plans or talk right now to shut down Toll 275 or PNG? Talk about that? Is that something you feel thinking about?
We did have that conversation, I think, with the governor yesterday. That would be an event where there's actual flooding on those roadways, and then the decision would be made to shut those down. The Sunshine Skyway is more of a wind issue. I do want to just hit one other issue, which isn't, germane to this specifically, but one of the things which I talked with President Biden again today is about that infrastructure bill. No one's infrastructure is built to handle the kind of water event that we may have faced had the storm stayed on its track. And so that funding remains vital. Our infrastructure, we've invested a lot in it, where's Claude? But we're not there, and I don't think any system in Florida would be able to handle that kind of water. So that infrastructure bill money is very important. Yeah. I can, thank you.
All right, our St. Petersburg officials here giving us some information, especially as they continue to track this hurricane, just as each and every single county has been doing ever since it came upon the radar that it was going to be making its track towards the Gulf Coast. Of course, right now, millions of Floridians already ordered to evacuate as this continues to make its way towards land. But we will continue to give you more of these updates right here for you on Live Now from Fox. We'll step away away for a brief break, bringing you more content across the country and especially across Florida as they prepare for Hurricane Ian right here after this 2-minute break. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. Hurricane Ian still gathering strength as it continues to move after Cuba now towards Florida. We do know wind speeds are being docked at about 120 miles per hour. Right now, this hurricane, a Category 3 as it's moving northward now at about 10 miles per hour. So right now, we're still about 255 miles from Sarasota, Florida. That's exactly where we had Governor Ron DeSantis meeting with officials as they continue to keep track of this storm. Let's go ahead and bring you his latest update from Sarasota right here for you on Live Now from Fox.
Sheriff Kurt Hoffman, and then we have Ed McCrane as well to talk about final stages of preparations for what is going to be a really, really significant hurricane that's going to impact the state of Florida. I think as many of you know, this storm, Hurricane Ian, is now located about 200 miles southwest of Key West. It's moving north at 12 miles per hour. It has passed or is in the process of passing Cuba. It is a Category 3 storm, which is a major hurricane, and the sustained winds are 125 miles per hour. We've been preparing different things throughout the state. We've been working with the locals. I think if you go back 48 hours and you looked at where that track was going, even though we said don't get wedded to where that eye is, you know, they had the eye of the storm arriving someplace in northern Florida in the Big Bend region. Then that track has shifted consistently eastward. As we went to bed last night, the anticipation was landfall in the Tampa Bay area. And now the models this morning, both the European model, the American model, the ICON, all have it coming into the Sarasota region. The 11 a.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center, they revised their guidance to see it south of Tampa Bay into this region. Now, that's still not set in stone. I'd say anyone on the Gulf Coast prepare for impacts, and that was true even when it was going to make landfall places further north. We knew that there would be big storm surges as far south as Collier County. So that's what we're dealing with here, though, is continued preparations, heeding the warnings and the evacuation orders that we have from our local officials, and you're going to hear from that some additional guidance here in Sarasota. People remember Charlie was earmarked to go into the Tampa Bay. It turned south and impacted places, particularly like Charlotte County. This is a little bit different than that because it is a big storm. It is going to kick up a lot of water as it comes in, and you're going to end up with really significant storm surge. You're going to end up with really significant flood events, and this is the type of storm surge that is life-threatening. Another factor that they're forecasting now is it makes landfall somewhere. Let's say it's in Sarasota County. Most of the forecasts have it slowing down to almost a crawl, and what that means is it's going to dump an inordinate amount of rain. So that could be Sarasota, could be a little bit inland. Obviously, the impact could be somewhere down this coast in different ways. There's still time for it to wobble, but I think most of the forecasts are anticipating a landfall, then a slow to almost a crawl, which is going to put a lot of saturation in the ground. So this is going to be a major water event, both in terms of the storm surge and in terms of the flooding. Evacuation orders have been issued up and down the Gulf Coast of Florida, including here in Sarasota County. The issue with this is if you are in one of these low-lying areas and you have the potential for 10, 15 feet of storm surge, that can absolutely be life-threatening. Those orders, I think, are not taken lightly. I think that that's what is the best to keep you safe. And you don't need to evacuate to another state. You don't need to evacuate hundreds of miles away. The key is to get to high ground and be in a safe structure. And I know here in Sarasota, they have shelters that are open that can do friends and family in the area. If you are going to go somewhere in other parts of the state of Florida, we're advising that you can go south and then across Alligator Alley. Southeast Florida seems to be doing better. This track may end up taking it all across I-4. It could take it in other areas. But the most important thing with the evacuation is just get to the higher ground, get to safe structure. It doesn't mean you have to be in a place where there's no storm or where you're not going to face anything, because in Florida we have structures that can deal with these hurricanes. It's hard to deal with 10 feet of water, and that's really what is underlying the evacuation notices. If you're in the barrier islands, if you're in some of the places that are susceptible to that, you are in risk. FDOT and FHP are coordinating about the flow of traffic. As of now, on 75 out of here, it's moving. We have had increased folks on the road starting yesterday, heading eastbound on Interstate 4. I think you're going to continue to see it pick up on I-75 now that the track has shifted further south into this part of the state. FDOT is prepared and FHP are prepared to open the shoulder to emergency use for evacuations. But that will happen once the sustained traffic goes under 40 miles an hour. I've not reached that point yet, and so when you do, then they will do it. The people sometimes ask, are you going to do all lanes on both sides one direction? FDOT has studied that over like 10 years, and they've determined that's not the most effective way to do it. You need people to be able to get into the storm for supplies and rescue and whatnot. So the emergency lanes, that is going to be the first step. Of course, we've suspended tolls in the affected areas, and we will keep those suspended, and we will expand that as need be. Fuel is still being provided. I know there's a lot of people out getting fuel. We've seen lines, but you still see they're going to keep providing that until it's no longer safe to do so. And then, of course, once the storm hits and passes, that's going to be a priority to clear the roads so that we're able to get the fuel back to the gas stations. People should anticipate losing power. Just when you have a storm of this magnitude, that's what happens. It knocks down trees, it knocks down power lines. So when you're making preparations, just be prepared to be able to make do without having consistent power. And that may be a matter of days. It may be more than just a few days. It really depends on the intensity of the storm, and it depends on how much structural damage is done to the underlying infrastructure that powers our state. Of course, we have, I think we've got over almost 30,000 folks that are now stationed in various companies that are going to be ready to go and work to get the power back on once the storm has passed. We also know that people who are evacuating may not necessarily want to do a shelter. Maybe they don't have family. Maybe they want to do a hotel room. Well, Visit Florida has partnered with Expedia to launch an emergency accommodation page. Anyone who's been ordered to evacuate can use this page to find available available accommodations in other areas of the state, just go to expedia.com/Florida, expedia.com/Florida. We have probably more than 2.5 million people right now that are under some form of an evacuation order. So we understand there's going to be a need to use everything at our disposal, not just shelter, not just friends and family, but also available hotel rooms. Know your evacuation zone. You're going to hear another announcement here in a minute from Sarasota. FloridaDisaster.org/plan-prepare. FloridaDisaster.org/plan-prepare. If you go there, you can determine where your evacuation zone is. It's different from the FEMA flood maps. This is something that is impacting whether you should evacuate in the case of a storm, and that is what your local emergency managers are relying upon. Don't leave your pets behind. We need to make sure we're taking care of the pets. There are pet-friendly shelters. There's information about planning for taking care of your pets in the times of disaster at FloridaDisaster.org/plan-prepare, FloridaDisaster.org/plan-prepare. We have shelters open here in Sarasota and surrounding counties, and that's something that's going to be very, very important as the next day or two goes on. And if you want to see where the available shelters are in your area or even in other parts of Florida, you can go to FloridaDisaster.org/shelters, FloridaDisaster.org/shelters. We are continuing to forego tolling, and we may expand that as need be. We have 35 school districts that have announced closures, and more may happen as the track becomes more certain. If you want the latest up-to-date information on schools, go to fldoe.org/storminfo. That's fldoe.org/storminfo. We have 5,000 Florida National Guardsmen that are activated and that are staging and that will be ready to go and help people who may need help once this storm hits. We've got another 2,000 from neighboring states. We have urban search and rescue teams that are activated, and we have another 3 that are on standby should their services be required. Florida Fish and Wildlife, they're activated, they're standing by, both in terms of vehicles that they would use to traverse water, as well as aviation assets. That's all tools will be at the disposal. We have FHP with 12-hour shifts and additional state troopers that have already been mobilized to the Gulf Coast of Florida. And of course, we now have Coast Guard. Who's in the Coast Guard at the EOC right now?
Admiral McPherson.
Yeah, we have Admiral McPherson is at the EOC in Tallahassee. So we appreciate the Coast Guard being there and offering support if need be. Long-term care facilities, as of now, 100% are reporting backup power in the form of generators. I know there's been evacuations of high-risk seniors, and that is the right thing to do. At the same time, there's a lot of these facilities that may not be in a flood zone or may not be in a zone A that they will be in there. They probably are going to lose power, and so having that is very important when you have medically dependent individuals. The entire state is under a state of emergency. As you see the track, there may be portions of the state that don't see any major impacts. Clearly, if it barrels into Sarasota and then goes out into the Atlantic Ocean off the east coast of Florida, probably not going to have significant impacts in northwest Florida, whereas there had been tracks just a couple days ago that had taken it all the way into places like Okaloosa and Escambia counties. We also, though, because of the change in the track, there's going to be more counties on the interior that are going to have more direct impacts. I mean, everyone's getting rain. You're going to see that. That's going to absolutely be impactful. But if you have it come through a place like Sarasota, yes, it will weaken, but you're going to probably have at least tropical storm force winds all the way until it exits the state of Florida, wherever that may be. We've authorized emergency refills of medication and prescriptions for 30 days. We've suspended weight restrictions, and we've waived those policies so that commercial trucks can bring in as much supply as they can to make sure that the folks here have what they need. We have received at the state level 550 requests for assistance from local counties. We fulfilled 495 and are on the way to do more. Some of those requests can only be fulfilled once the storm hits, and those will be as well. We were able to meet with the leadership here in Sarasota County, and we stand by ready to do additional assistance once that is requested. We have done over 200 medical professionals to county special needs shelters. We have 120 that that are in surrounding counties in the Tampa Bay area. On top of that, we have staging areas, and as the storm track has changed, Kevin and his people have migrated some of the preparations and the staging further south in the state. When you had the eye of the storm looking like it would go north of Tampa, that's different than when you see it coming now south of Tampa. So still have support in Tampa and in north of that, and I would say that just because the eye is no longer on Tampa Bay, one little wobble can change that, and I think you're absolutely going to see major impacts in the Tampa Bay region, regardless of whether the track continues to go south or not. Generators and pumps are staged to help with flooding. Pre-landfall fluid and water is staged to help with counties that may be in need. So please continue to monitor the local weather reports. Please listen to your local officials and the updates that they provide, and make sure that you are prepared and you finish your preparations. And if you are in an evacuation zone where you've been called upon to evacuate, that you heed those warnings and do what you need to do to protect yourself and to protect your loved ones. We want everybody to be safe. We want to make sure that they get through this in one piece. There's going to be damage, there's going to be flooding, there'll be wind damage, but those are things that we can fix. It's not necessarily easy to do, but we can do it. You can unring the bell if someone is in a very hazardous situation and then ends up dying because of a really nasty hurricane and storm surge. So please heed the warnings. We want everyone to be safe. We want everyone to get through this, but we appreciate everything everybody's been doing across the board, across the state of Florida, to step up when we have these things that bear down on us. And I think you've seen at the local level in particular, you've got some really, really strong emergency management personnel. This has been a very difficult thing to track. It's gone one direction or the other, and they've responded very quickly as new data has come in. Okay, Kevin Guthrie, why don't you come up and give an update for DEM?
Thank you, Governor. As the governor said, we have over 500 missions that we're filling presently. I think the current number is around 550. We continue to send ambulance strike teams, oxygen, technical communication services statewide, search and rescue teams. We have additional search and rescue teams standing by. I was on the phone with 3 other states this morning, again, checking on the availability of additional resources in Alabama, Kentucky, and Tennessee. They are all committed to sending us whatever it is that we need. Residents should and can expect power outages. That is going to happen. If you're a medically dependent resident, and that's a term that was coined right here in Sarasota County by the leadership here. If you're a medically dependent resident, you depend on electricity, then you need to start seeking shelter now. All right, go to a friend or a family member or seek shelter. I'll let Ed follow up more on that. During previous hurricanes, we've seen certainly situations where communications go down. I highly encourage you to develop a family communications plan on how you're going to do that after the storm hits when you do not have communications. At this point in time, obviously, there's a lot of people running to gas stations. We want to encourage citizens and residents to keep their tanks half full. When you get to that half full mark, go ahead and start seeking to fill it up. That shortens the amount of time at the lines at the gas stations. It also conserve some of the bulk issues as we have somebody put 30 gallons of gas into a tank. Same thing goes for electrical cars. Keep those batteries at 50% or more. Make sure you have cash on hand. Make sure you go into the ATMs, and as ATMs and credit card services need power to function. So again, we've already talked about we're going to lose that capability. Plants, things around your house, yard furniture, go ahead, if if it's out there on the lawn, go ahead and get it in. Make sure it's secure inside of a garage or some other area. The last thing that I will talk very briefly about is many people are having trouble navigating websites and whatnot. There's so much information out there. Where can you go to get the best information? I know Ed is going to mention the local call-in center number here, but for us at the Florida Division of Emergency Management, we do have the SAIL line, the State Assistance Information Line, up and running, and I will give you that 1-800 number. If you have any information as it relates to the state, you can contact us at 1-800-342-3557. I will say that again. It's 1-800-342-3557. You can also follow us at the division's Facebook page and on Twitter at FLCERT. That's FLSERT. Governor, again, thank you for your leadership on this.
Okay. All right, Ed McCrane, Sarasota County EM Director.
Thank you, Governor.
Yep.
Good afternoon. Here at the Sarasota County Emergency Operations Center, we continue to monitor the path of impacts. We really appreciate the support of Governor DeSantis and Kevin Guthrie from the Florida Division of Emergency Management. Great partners that just being here tells us that we have that support. They continue to work together with our school, law enforcement, municipal partners to get the word out. We previously evacuated level A. That's in the process today, which is all the red on our map, all barrier islands, low-lying areas prone to flooding, which includes mobile homes, RVs, and those that live on boats. And that mobile home park can be anywhere in the county. If you look at the Sarasota County evacuation map, you'll see red shapes throughout the map. Those are mobile home parks, and they are part of level A. Because of the change in the track and the information we received from the National Hurricane Center and the Weather Service this morning, we are now adding level B. At this point, right now, we're adding level B, which will encompass a few more areas of the county adjacent to those level A red areas. To find the nearest evacuation center, visit scgov.net/beprepared, or you can call 311. All 12 evacuation centers for general population are open. We began accepting evacuees at noon today. And we have 2 medical dependent. At this point, the medical dependent process is not as it would be during blue sky. You need to call 311 so we can do a quick triage and get you into the system. Don't go in and try to fill out the form and expect it to be acted on quickly, as we're already in the process of moving people. Evacuation centers, though, like the governor said, should be your last resort. They're the lifeboat. You should go to friends or family if you can. And you don't have to go hundreds of miles. You can go tens of miles. You can choose east-west routes like 72, 70, 64, or like the governor said, go south on 75 and seek refuge down there. Our buses are serving at the transportation rally points. We will end those services tonight at 8 p.m. or once winds reach 35 sustained. The bridges will remain open for vehicular traffic, but once winds get to 35, the U.S. Coast Guard will issue a notice that the bridges will be closed to marine traffic. And let me emphasize that. There's a lot of misconception about that. We do not leave the bridges in the up position to close them. They are down, locked, the equipment is removed, the bridge tender leaves, and law enforcement may be placed there to prevent people from going back west over the bridge unless they have an emergency situation. The utilities will be shutting off water service to all residents and businesses located on Siesta Key after 5 o'clock this evening. City of Sarasota may be doing the same on Lido and that area, so keep that in mind. Solid waste collection services have been canceled. The landfill is closed. We asked our community continue to be smart, make their preparations now, and follow evacuation notices when issued. If you're going to an evacuation center, eat before you go. Bring your emergency kit, including bedding, and bring a flashlight, toiletries. You're going to get 20 square feet of space there. Our teams there, along with the school district partners, will get you in situated. You can bring a pet. Every single evacuation center in Sarasota County is pet friendly. We have teams there trained. Our school partners, we decided that after Hurricane Irma because everybody came to every shelter with pets. So we are prepared for that now. Continue to monitor local media, county social media, and please register for emergency notifications by going to alertsarasotacounty.com.
Okay. All right. We also have from the Department of Transportation, our Secretary, Jared Perdue.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor mentioned, we have suspended tolls to aid in evacuations in the impacted areas. Specifically Alligator Alley and many of the toll facilities in the Tampa region. We will continue to monitor the path of the hurricane, and as needed, we can expand those toll suspensions. We've begun locking down and fortifying all of our construction projects. Our coastal projects, we obviously secure and lock down the barges and cranes, and also open all the travel lanes on all of our inland projects to aid in evacuations. For our bridges, we monitor those very closely with FHP. When wind speeds on the bridges reach 40 miles per hour, we coordinate closely with FHP and local law enforcement. and begin shutting those bridges down to traffic for safety of the traveling public. We'll continue to monitor that as the storm progresses. We're going to continue staging resources nearby for post-storm bridge inspections. This is a priority for us, especially for our coastal bridges. We'll start there. We deploy resources immediately after the storm, and it's safe to do so in order to inspect those bridges, make sure they're safe for passage, prepare any repairs that are needed to get them open for the life safety mission, and also getting supplies in and out. The staging of resources for post-storm events in terms of roadway clearance and supporting the life safety mission is currently ongoing, and we're also coordinating very closely with our utility partners to aid in the power restoration after the storm makes impact. We're going to continue close coordination with FHP, Georgia DOT, Florida DEP, and U.S. Coast Guard on additional needed actions. All of our ports, our seaports, currently have adequate fuel supplies. They're well positioned to quickly reinstate operations following the storm and keep fuel supplies moving. The seaports in the cone of influence have begun suspending operations in terms of sea traffic and staging appropriate measures to safely restore operations as soon as the storm passes through. We're also coordinating very closely with our airports, and for airport closure information, you should contact your local airports. We are staffing traffic management centers across the state 24/7. We're closely monitoring traffic flows on all of our major facilities to aid in evacuations. We have brought on additional resources for road rangers and motorist aid assistance in case motorists need help as they're evacuating. We'll continue to watch that traffic. As the governor mentioned, we do have the ability to utilize the shoulder for vehicular traffic if it is needed during evacuations. We coordinate that decision very closely with FHP. As soon as travel speeds get below 40 miles per hour, we typically are able to do that, and we've deployed signs and we'll have personnel all along those corridors to help aid motorists in knowing how to navigate that. We have successfully deployed this in the past, and so it works very well. So we'll continue to watch that, and as we get closer, we'll watch the traffic. Currently, we're seeing anywhere from 30 to 40% increases over normal on our major interstate facilities like I-75 and I-4. We have a 511 travel information system. Please visit fl511.com for information, or you can download the app on both Apple and Android devices. Again, thank you, and thank you, Governor, for your leadership.
Okay, and what Jared will do, these bridges, as was mentioned by Ed, they will, once there's a certain wind, they will be closed because they're not safe. The storm will come through. In the aftermath, those bridges will be reopened, but only after they've been inspected to ensure that they didn't suffer significant damage. We want to make sure that the bridges are safe. So Jared will have people ready to go, Army Corps, and the goal is that once it passes, get in, look at the bridges, make sure that they're safe, and then give the A-OK for people to be able to get back on there and get back to their homes. So you have time today to make the arrangements that you need to make. Listen to the call. If they mention the Zone B, that's not something that's taken lightly. That's something that is looking at the latest weather information that was a lot different than maybe 48 hours ago, and identifying potential vulnerable locations within the county here. And I know they're doing this in other counties with their local EM directors. And so this is going to be a significant storm. You're going to have massive, massive storm surge, a little bit different than when Charlie was supposed to go to Tampa back in 2004 and then went further south. That had a lot of wind, and this had a lot of wind too, but it did not kick up the same level of storm surge that this is anticipating doing, nor did it produce the level of flooding that this is anticipated doing. So protect yourself, take precautions. We'll have support coming in as soon as it passes. We want to help everybody get back on their feet as soon as possible. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
We've been, obviously covering preparations with a lot of our new Floridians who I think are taking this storm seriously. But I'm a Floridian, a lot of Floridians, of course, who've been here for a long time, and who historically have not left when they've been told to evacuate. Can you speak directly to those folks who plan on doing that this time around?
Well, I think it depends on your location. I think that when you're in these Zone A's, when you have a potential historic storm surge coming, you are taking a major, major risk. That's just the reality. And so, as Kevin said earlier today, if you evacuate out of one of those zones, Zone A, and you get to higher ground in a safe structure, the one thing we say, you're not going to die. If you're in harm's way, you're really taking a risk. Now, there are definitely going to be people in this county and in other counties around here who are not in a Zone A or Zone B situation. Maybe they are on higher ground, they have perfectly safe structures, and they make those decisions that's best for them to kind of hunker down, and that's fine. But when you're in those really low-lying areas, given what the storm's going to do, you are absolutely taking a risk. And regardless, I think, of what people do in terms of staying or evacuating, just be prepared that you will lose power, and that will happen. And it's not going to come back on immediately. There's going to be a storm. If it's crawling very slowly throughout this county and in this part of the state, that's going to be dumping an inordinate amount of rain. It's going to be difficult for anybody to get in immediately. You're going to have to clear roads. You're going to have to do a lot. So just prepare for that and just understand that you are going to have interruptions in power. Understand you will have interruptions in fuel at some point. Now, Kevin's team, working with the utilities and everybody, FDOT, I mean, the goal is going to be clear the roads, get the linemen in there, do what you need to do for fuel. Of course, that's going to be all hands on deck. But there is going to absolutely, with a storm of this magnitude, going to be a time when you're going to have to do that. So for the new Floridians, some are in this for the first time and are really heating, which is great. Others may not necessarily know what to expect. And so if you are here when it passes, just understand, with no power, it gets really hot and nasty. I mean, it's not necessarily going to be great to be sitting around. That's just par for the course when you deal with these things. So just make sure you're prepared for that. Yes.
Secretary Perdue, are you considering making any roads one way? And then my other question is, what are you doing to ensure that gas supply continues?
Yeah, sure. So, no, we've done a lot of studies over the years and found that using the shoulder for those evacuations is really effective. We don't want to one-way facilities because we need the other side of the facility for the life safety mission and getting supplies in and out. And so we found that works really well. And as I mentioned, fuel supplies are topped off at all of our major ports, and so right now fuel levels are looking good. I mean, there's lines at gas stations, but right now fuel levels are looking good.
And the decision, as Jared mentioned earlier, to use the shoulder is going to be dependent on when traffic slows to a certain amount. And we have not yet seen it consistently be below 40 miles an hour. And really, you're looking at I-75 and I-4 as the two major interstates where that would be an issue. Also, Kevin, the state, we have fuel contracts in place to bring it in from other places. And so, he's working on that. And that may not be needed. But if it is, we want to make sure that we're able to get fuel going as quickly as possible.
If this ends up being, the worst case scenario that nobody wants to see, do you feel confident that the state is ready for the response after the fact with the storm surge, the flooding, all these different things? Because this could be.
So the bad thing about there's many great things about Florida. One of the negatives is that you have risk of natural disasters and hurricanes, and that's just always been true throughout our state's history. The good part about that is because everyone knows it's a risk. We have some of the people that respond to these that are the best in the business, and it's not just at the state level. We obviously have good people there, but you have people in these counties who've been doing this for a long time, and so they've seen a lot. And they've seen what works, what doesn't. What I can tell you is we've marshaled all the resources available. When counties have asked, we're fulfilling those requests. We want to make sure that people have what they need to be able to get through this. Now, once the storm passes, of course, immediately, if anyone needs to be rescued, that's why we have the National Guard. That's why we have Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission with their boats and their aircraft. That's why we have USAR teams that are going to be ready. So those are really major assets to help people who may be in harm's way. Once that's taken care of, the resumption of services is going to be priority. That's why you have 30,000 linemen amongst all these different utility companies that are staged and ready to go, because most people will get through this with minimal damage to themselves or their property, but if they can get back to normal as quickly as possible, that makes helping everything else so much easier. So there's going to be a priority priority on doing that. And as Kevin mentioned before, with the fuel and the communications, all of that is very, very important to get everybody back on their feet. Now, when you're talking about storm surge of this nature, you're talking about the amount of water that may get dumped. You're going to have damage from the flooding. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. That could be residential damage. That could be commercial damage. Of course, when you have a strong hurricane making landfall, you're going to have a lot of trees that are going to be knocked over. That's going to cause damage. I think if you look, a lot of Florida homes are built to withstand a Category 3 hurricane or more, but what ends up happening is a tree falls on. Well, that's damage that's hard to stop at that point. And I think you're going to see it continue to go through the state of Florida potentially on this track, maybe not at hurricane strength winds, but you're going to have a lot of tropical storm force winds that are going to cause damage. It's going to create problems with vegetation. It's going to create problems with trees. So as all these things go, there are some tracks that are better than others. Clearly, we wanted this to just go out in the Gulf and not impact Florida at all. Now you're in a situation where it's impacting southwest part of our state, but it's likely to continue to go, maybe not at hurricane strength, but certainly a major, major storm system, potentially moving all the way through the interior of our state out into the Atlantic Ocean. So there's going to be a lot to do. And I'm proud of everybody at Florida Department of Emergency Management who's been up this. We declared a state of emergency last week when it wasn't even a formed system because we saw the potential.
You're watching live now from Fox, everyone. That was the latest Governor Ron DeSantis update there in Sarasota as we are awaiting a news conference from him a little bit later here on Live Now from Fox. Of course, we will feature that for you in real time. You can take a look here at the latest track there for Hurricane Ian there as we've been continuing to give you full coverage today here on Live Now from Fox. When we come back, we are going to be talking to the Sarasota County Emergency Management Chief, and he will be breaking down the various efforts that is going on there in his county. We'll be breaking it all down coming up in just 2 minutes here on Live Now from Fox.